I'm ashamed to admit that when they called for Arthur, I felt a flicker of pity, not hope. I'd watched him shrink for a year, and I couldn't see how a 72-year-old man with a leather tool bag could fix what 112,000 pounds of digital redundancy couldn't. But then I saw his hand stop trembling the moment he touched the circuit board, and I realized I'd been looking at the wrong kind of proof all along. I still don't know why he went back without a single word. Their triple backup cloud died from a 3-Pence resistor he warned about. No one can explain why being right waits 40 years to be believed. Not a small failure. Not a glitch you could patch. The whole thing just stopped. Blank screens across the intersection. Traffic backing up onto the main road. Police cars pulling up, drivers leaning on horns, someone already filming it on their phone for the local news. And somewhere in the back of the control room, a council technician was staring at a circuit board with the same expression you'd wear if someone handed you a letter in a language you couldn't read. He pressed buttons. He restarted the system. He checked the power supply. Nothing. 9:47 in the morning, and the brand new smart junction system, the one they'd spent 112,000 pounds on, was dead. You know what happened next? Someone said the words nobody wanted to say. Get Arthur. Here's the thing about being underestimated. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in 1,000 small cuts. A conversation where someone interrupts you. A meeting where they hand your proposal to a younger person. A phrase like, "We're going in a new direction," that really means, "We're leaving you behind." Arthur knew all those cuts. He'd been collecting them for about 3 years, ever since the council decided to modernize the traffic management department. He was 72 years old. He'd been maintaining the junction systems in this borough for 34 years. He knew every light, every sensor, every underground cable running beneath those roads like he knew the lines on his own palms. And they'd made him retire. Early retirement, Arthur. You've earned it. That's what they said. Friendly. Smiling. Like they were doing him a favor. He'd sat in that meeting and watched them explain that the new digital system would run itself. Self-diagnostic. Remote monitoring. Cloud-based integration. They used words like scalable, and optimized, and future-proof. Arthur had nodded along. He'd asked one question, just one, about what happens when the cloud goes down. The young project manager, a man named Marcus who wore glasses without lenses and had never fixed a junction box in his life, had smiled and said, "That's the beauty of it, Arthur. It's redundant. Triple backup." Arthur had nodded again. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. That wasn't his way. He'd just gone back to the workshop, packed his tools into an old leather bag, and walked out. I'm Nathan. Arthur's son. I was 26 when they made him retire. I just finished my master's in mechanical engineering, which sounds impressive until you realize I was working part-time at a coffee shop because nobody was hiring. I lived with him in the same flat I'd grown up in, above the old watch repair shop he'd run on weekends before the council work took over. The shop had been closed for years. The sign was still there, faded gold letters on black, Arthur's, clocks and repairs since 1978. Nobody came anymore. Nobody needed watch repairs. Everyone had phones. But the workbench was still there. The tools were still there. And Arthur was still there, sitting at that bench every evening, fixing things nobody asked him to fix. That was the thing about my dad. He couldn't stop fixing things. Even when nobody wanted him to. The first 6 months after retirement were the hardest. He'd wake up at 5:30, same as always. Put on his work clothes. Walk to the bus stop. Stand there for 10 minutes before he remembered. Then he'd walk back, sit at the kitchen table, and stare at the wall. I'd make him tea. He'd drink it cold. We didn't talk about it. That wasn't our way either. But I saw it. I saw the way his hands would twitch when we passed a junction box. The way he'd mutter under his breath when a traffic light was slightly off. The way he'd shake his head at the news whenever there was a congestion report. "They're running it wrong," he'd say. "Timing's off by 4 seconds." I'd nod. I didn't know what that meant. You're probably thinking this is going to be a story about a hero's return. Old man saves the day, everyone claps, he gets his job back. I've seen that movie. Hell, I've watched it with him on Sunday afternoons. But here's the thing about real life. Real life is the year in between. The year where nothing happens. The year where you watch someone you love slowly disappear into themselves. The year where the phone doesn't ring, where the pension runs thin, where the pride you once had turns into something smaller and grayer and harder to look at in the mirror. That year almost broke us. It started with a leak. A small one. Kitchen pipe under the sink. Nothing dramatic. I came home from my shift at the coffee shop and found him on the floor, lying on his back, his arms shoved up into the cabinet. Water everywhere. His jumper soaked. His face red from the effort. "Dad. What are you doing?" "Pipe's gone." I could have called a plumber. He didn't answer. He just kept twisting. Kept working. I knelt down next to him. "Let me help." "No. Dad." I said no. His voice came out harder than I'd ever heard it. Sharp. Almost angry. His eyes didn't meet mine. I sat back. Watched him fight that pipe for another 40 minutes. Watched him eventually get it fixed, because of course he did. Watched him stand up slowly, holding his lower back, water dripping from his elbows. He didn't say a word. He just walked to his room and closed the door. And I sat there in the kitchen, on the wet floor, and I understood something I hadn't wanted to understand. He wasn't fixing the pipe. He was proving he could still fix something. 3 weeks later, the council had the open meeting. The one where they unveiled the new system. The Smart Junction. The cloud-based future of traffic management. They invited all the old staff. A courtesy thing, probably. Maybe a little nostalgia. A chance to show off what they'd built. Arthur didn't want to go. I had to talk him into it. "It'll be good for you," I said. "See some old faces." He gave me a look. That look that said, "You don't understand and you never will." But he went. The meeting was in the town hall. Big room. Folding chairs. A projector screen at the front. Marcus the project manager standing there with a remote clicker and a smile that was just a little too wide. He ran through the presentation. Slides about efficiency. Slides about reduced congestion. Slides about data analytics and predictive algorithms. Arthur sat in the back row, arms crossed, saying nothing. I sat next to him. I could feel the tension in his shoulders. The way he was gripping his own forearm. At the end, Marcus opened for questions. Someone asked about maintenance costs. Someone asked about the installation timeline. Someone asked about a specific junction near the hospital that had been broken for months. Marcus answered each one smoothly. Confidently. Like he'd rehearsed them all. Then Arthur raised his hand. "Arthur. Good to see you." Question. Arthur stood up slowly. Took his time. Adjusted his glasses. "The Northwick Junction. The one by the hospital. You're putting in a sensor loop." "That's right." "How deep?" Marcus paused. "I'm sorry." "The sensor loop. How deep are you burying it?" "I'd have to check the specs, but I believe it's standard depth." "Standard depth is 6 inches. That junction floods. Every spring. The water table rises and the ground shifts." I told the department that in 2009 when they last replaced the loop. They buried it at 9 inches back then. Lasted 12 years before it needed work. The room went quiet. Marcus's smile flickered. "Arthur, I appreciate your concern, but the new sensors are sealed units. They're designed to handle moisture." "No, they're not." "I'm sorry. They're not sealed. I read the spec sheet. They've got a vent on the underside for pressure equalization. That vent will suck up water like a straw." Marcus's face changed. Just slightly. A tightening around the jaw. "Arthur, I think we've got it covered. It'll fail within 18 months. Thank you for your input. It'll fail within 18 months and you'll have to dig up the whole junction to fix it." Marcus looked at the audience. A little laugh. A little shake of the head. "Okay. Well. We've taken some notes. Thank you, Arthur." And he moved on to the next slide. I watched my father sit back down. His face was calm. Completely calm. But his hands were shaking. On the way home, I tried to say something. "He should have listened to you." Arthur didn't respond. "Dad. You were right. That junction does flood. I remember when they had to close it 2 years ago. Still nothing." "Dad. Nathan. Yeah. Stop." We walked the rest of the way in silence. That was the night I realized something I should have realized years earlier. Being right isn't the same as being heard. Arthur had been right about a dozen things over the past 3 years. The scheduling software they bought had a bug he'd warned them about. The new traffic light timings caused a bottleneck on the high street that he'd predicted. The pedestrian crossing they moved actually made the accident rate worse. He'd told them. Every time. Quietly. Respectfully. With the evidence. And every time, they'd nodded and smiled and done exactly what they were going to do anyway. I don't know which was worse. That they didn't believe him. Or that they didn't even consider the possibility that he might know something they didn't. The Smart Junction went live in April. It was beautiful. Sleek. Modern. The council put out a press release. Local news did a segment. Marcus was interviewed, standing next to the new control box, talking about how this was the future of urban infrastructure. Arthur watched it on the telly. Didn't say a word. June. First real rain of the season. I came home from work and found him in the workshop. Not fixing anything. Just sitting at the bench, staring at the wall. "You okay?" "Northwick. What about it?" "It flooded today. Water got into the control box. They had to shut down the junction for 3 hours." I sat down across from him. "Did they call you?" "No." "Did they fix it?" "They bypassed the sensor. Manual override. It's running, but the timing's off. There's a queue backing up past the pharmacy." I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. He looked down at his hands. "They could have listened," he said quietly. "That's all. They could have just listened." July. August. September. The junction kept having problems. I heard about it from customers at the coffee shop. People complaining about the traffic near the hospital. Someone said the lights were doing weird things, turning green when there were no cars, staying red for no reason. Marcus did an interview where he said they were working on optimizing the algorithm. Arthur watched it. Didn't laugh. Didn't smile. Just watched. October. The first real failure. The sensor loop at Northwick shorted out completely. Exactly like Arthur had said. Water damage to the internal components. The sealed unit, which wasn't sealed, had filled with moisture over the summer. They had to close the junction for 3 days. Dig up the road. Replace the sensor. Adjust the programming. Council repair bill, £37,000. Marcus didn't do an interview that time. And then came Tuesday. The day the whole thing died. I got the call at 10:15 a.m. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. Nathan? It's Derek. Derek from the council. Your dad's old team. Derek. I remembered him. Quiet guy, early 60s, graying mustache. He'd worked with Arthur for about 20 years. Yeah. Listen. We've got a situation. The main control system just crashed. The whole thing. All the junctions. We're running on backup, but the backup's not talking to the central server, and nobody here can figure out why. I was already grabbing my coat. Did you call my dad? We wanted to see if he'd be willing to come in. You wanted to see. Nathan. Please. We're in trouble here. I found Arthur in the workshop. He was sitting at the bench, cleaning a pocket watch. A silver one. Someone had brought it in a few weeks ago, old thing, probably from the 1940s. He'd had it apart for days, slowly putting it back together piece by piece. Dad. He didn't look up. The council called. Derek. The whole system crashed. They need you. He kept cleaning. They said they'd send a car. Silence. Dad. I know you're angry. He set down the watch. Slowly. Carefully. Like it might break. I'm not angry, Nathan. What are you? He looked at me then. Really looked. I'm tired. He went. I don't know if you'd call it grace or pride or just a deep, quiet sense of duty. But when the car arrived, he put on his coat, picked up his old leather bag of tools, and walked out the door without a word. I went with him. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see it. Maybe I needed to. The control room was chaos. Phones ringing. People shouting. Marcus standing in the middle of it all, pale, sweating, his perfect hair a mess. He was holding a tablet and looking at it like it had personally betrayed him. Arthur. Thank God. Arthur didn't respond. He just walked past him, straight to the main control panel. It was a mess of wires and circuit boards. The new system, all sleek and modern, had been torn open by someone trying to diagnose the problem. Components everywhere. Arthur stood in front of it for a long moment. Just looking. Who's been in here? One of the technicians raised his hand. I did. I was trying to trace the power drop. Arthur nodded. You disconnected the backup relay. Only temporarily. You disconnected the backup relay. The primary system failed, the backup tried to engage, but the handshake signal couldn't complete because you'd broken the circuit. The technician's face went white. Arthur reached into his bag. Pulled out a tool I'd never seen before. Some kind of probe, old, worn, the handle wrapped in electrical tape. He started tracing wires. Here is the moment the room went quiet. Not because anyone told them to be quiet. But because everyone stopped. Everyone turned. Everyone watched this 72-year-old man in a worn coat work on a machine they'd told him he was too old to understand. He moved slowly. Deliberately. The way you move when you've done something 1,000 times. He found the problem in 12 minutes. A fried resistor. 3 pence part. The whole system had gone down because of a 3 pence part that had overheated because the cooling fan had been mounted the wrong way around. He showed them. The fan's pulling air across the wrong component. It's been overheating this board since day one. The resistor finally gave out. Replace it, flip the fan, and you're fine. Marcus stared at it. That's it. Arthur looked at him. Not angry. Not smug. Just tired. Sometimes it's the simple things. They found the part. Arthur replaced it himself. Flipped the fan. Booted the system back up. It worked. The junctions came back online. The traffic started flowing. The calls stopped. The room filled with a kind of silence you only get after a disaster that didn't quite happen. Arthur packed his tools. Zipped his bag. Stood up. Marcus cleared his throat. Arthur. We. He couldn't finish the sentence. Arthur looked at him. Waited. We were wrong, Marcus said. Quietly. In front of everyone. About the system. About you. We should have listened. Arthur nodded once. Small. Barely visible. Then he walked out. I followed him outside. The air was cold. October chill. He stood on the pavement, looking up at the junction lights, watching them cycle through their colors. Dad. He didn't answer. You just saved them £37,000. At least. Nothing. You want to get some lunch? He turned to me. And for the first time in 3 years, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't tired. Not victory. Not vindication. Not even satisfaction. Just peace. Let's go home, he said. We walked back. Didn't take the car. Walked through the streets, past the junctions he'd built, past the traffic he'd fixed, past the city he'd held together with nothing but experience and a worn leather bag. I thought about what he'd said that night in the kitchen. They could have just listened. And they hadn't. Not at first. Not until the new way failed. But they'd called him. In the end, they'd called him. Being right is cheap. Being believed, that's what he'd waited 30 years for. He's still in the workshop. Every evening. Fixing things nobody asked him to fix. But sometimes now, the phone rings. And it's Derek. Or someone from the team. With a question about a junction, a sensor, a timing issue they can't figure out. And Arthur answers. Not smug. Not angry. Just, helpful. The way he always was. I came home last week and found him working on that pocket watch again. The silver one from the 1940s. He'd got it running. It was ticking quietly on the bench. How long did that take? He held it up. Listen to it tick. About 40 years, he said. And he smiled. Here's what I learned from watching my father be underestimated. Being quiet doesn't mean being weak. Being patient doesn't mean being wrong. And being right, truly right, doesn't need a crowd to validate it. It just needs time. Time for the new way to fail. Time for the old knowledge to prove itself. Time for the people who dismissed you to come back and ask for your help. And when they do, you don't say, I told you so. You don't need to. The room says it for you. If you've ever watched someone you love be dismissed, waved away, made to feel obsolete, if you've ever been that person yourself, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. Because wisdom is not obsolete. It just takes longer to be believed. And that's okay. Some things are worth waiting for. When they said, get Arthur, would you have gone back or made them wait? If that moment of vindication made your chest tighten, that's what the like button is for. If you believe the best knowledge comes from those nobody listens to, this channel's for you.